All right, we are rolling.
Hi.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi there.
We are at our IUPA meeting. I don't know which one this is, 4th or 5th maybe, but today is August 9th, 2023. It's 2 p.m. and I'm Trudy Odell, the HR Director.
Jason Oliva, Finance Director.
Kim Jones with Finance.
Brian Rizzo, IUPA South Daytona.
Greg Cook, Business Agent for IEPA.
Brian Lambert, Attorney, IUPA.
Daisy Gaffney, Board Member. Mark Cheatham, Chief of Police, South Daytona.
Well, we really appreciate, I know somebody worked really hard on this list, so maybe we should kind of just peruse that list. We did meet with the city manager the other day and tried to get his input a little bit, so we do have answers on these.
Okay.
So I don't know if you want to go over that list, or if you want to just go over each article and incorporate it in the contract. Do you have a preference, Craig, or does it matter?
What do you want?
Maybe go over this, because I think we all agreed that a lot of this doesn't need to be in the contract, and that's why I have my chief here.
Okay.
Because he can talk,
Okay.
a lot about the different things on here. So we'll do that first?
Do you have
Okay.
another printout of that?
I think I might, we can share. And if you know what's on there, okay.
We can share
I
that.
can look on my phone.
Yeah, let me see.
If anybody needs it, I can email it to you real quick.
I have it on my phone.
Alright, this is from.
Oh, I got one more.
Greg
Do
asked
you wanna give
if
that
you
to me?
didn't
I got
want
one
me
more.
on it. You got one? Megan or me?
Maybe Megan. Okay.
Okay,
You got one down there to show Chief?
Yeah, we
okay, so, I've been hearing a lot of scuttle. I know, Chief, you had, decided to do some schedule changes, I believe, so I know we talked a little bit about that. You wanna talk more about that?
Sure.
Okay.
We have a quarterly schedule, every 4 months, officers change. I saw where you guys had emailed Brian, but I don't actually change the schedule directly, obviously Brian's in charge of the schedule. So I don't have I don't have the direct information, actually, what the issue was, so as soon as I get this email, I'll look at it real quick. But I do know that you had mentioned to me about holding off on having to do their schedule change this September, which I said it's not that big of a deal. Everybody said it's September, May, and you guys change one other time, right? It's 3 times a year?
January.
January. The only downside about that is we hold off and keep everybody on the same rotation, one cycle, then the shift that was the night shift during the summer this year will end up being in the same night shift during the summer next year. So that's the only issue I see, holding off and not making a change. Because normally that's how we kind of built our rotation, with knowing we had one year was a good summer, and the next year we had a bad summer, or I should say a hot summer. You guys correct me if I'm wrong.
So,
Is that
I know one issue with like guys changing to different shifts and different rotations, is that, like, say, if you're on the same one, this year you work Christmas, next year you're off, the next year you work,
Right.
the next year you
Yeah,
don't.
you get another-
Some guys were complaining that they've worked the last 3-4 years Christmas, and with their shift change, they'll be working Christmas again, some guys with small kids. I know that was one issue coming up.
So what are you guys, I guess the question is, what are you guys wanting? What are you asking for? Because, obviously Brian does the schedule.
Right.
I don't interfere with his schedule change at all. I let him kind of run that, because he's a patrol lieutenant. Now, if there's an issue, then obviously I'll step in. And I saw where Casey, like I said, was upset about some things, or the guys were upset about it. I don't
Yeah,
know
that's what I
what-
hate to everybody, yeah.
I didn't know what the specifics were, so like I said, I didn't respond to anybody on it. I just assumed that Brian would get with you guys, and you guys would work it out. But then Teresa said something about holding off on the actual shift change for a rotation, which I told her we do it 3 times a year, and letting it just ride for another 4 months on the same rotation. But if you guys, that's an easy.
It wasn't a shift change, it wasn't
Right.
rotating every 4 months, it was that he's switching up the shifts every year, which other agencies don't do that. Like, when you're on patrol, you're on the same shift. Some of them, you have the same call sign the whole time you're on patrol.
Oh, you're
to
talking
get
about
off.
more of a permanent group.
Right, which is what the guys thought last year when he did it, because he had the sergeants all do the kind of draft pick whoever they want on their shift,
A
whatever.
lottery?
Yeah, and then the guy saw it, okay, this is gonna be my shift, that way,
Yeah.
1 year I'm on holidays, this year I'm off, that kind of thing, and it wouldn't flip-flop in effect, and then that was kinda,
It's just trying to come up with something that doesn't interfere with management rights and also gives the officer some sort of permanence as far as their schedule. Just.
You're looking to push it for consistency.
Yes,
Yeah,
exactly.
basically what was that, right?
Yeah.
Am I wrong?
Oh, right,
No, no, no.
100%.
absolutely.
And that's fine, like I said, I can talk with Brian, keeping the shift the same one cycle if you'd like. The only anomaly, I'll be right up front with you guys, that I threw him was back when we had that issue of the TV thing. I told him, make sure you change that up, because the manager had asked us to change it up, so it's the only thing I asked, and I left it at that, but I said, don't do it until the next shift change. So if I had my guess, that was part of it. I'm sure there were some other things that falls into play, but we are a small department, so if you move one guy, you're actually moving another guy from another shift, because we don't have enough people to move around, and that's,
So that's
my
just
only
one-
defense for Brian on that, was to say
Yeah.
that, hey, when you move one guy, you have to move somebody else. So, but that was originally, the only thing I told him back, which you guys are both aware of it, when we all had that sit down in here, and I said, hey, this is probably gonna cause a breakup for a little bit. So I told Brian, when the next shift change comes, which was, I think is this September, I said, you're gonna have to do some moving around. Now, I don't know if that was specifically what you guys are gearing this towards, or if it's, in general, because
No, I didn't realize that that's what part of it was.
Okay,
For
because I didn't get
example,
with
a
Brian and
partic-
tell him,
a
hey,
particular shift.
shake the ship.
Because he said it was to move around FTOs and THIs.
Well, that's possible too,
And-
I mean, I'm not gonna,
Yeah.
say that that's
It-
not.
It upset some guys to the point that they said that, if that's the case, that they didn't want to do THI or FTO or whatever it was.
Yeah.
Um,
So why don't we do this, why don't we move forward, why don't we just lock it as it is right now? Now, I don't know, that might upset the night shift, because obviously if they're stuck on a night shift for another 4 months, but I'll ask Brian to ask them. You guys just carry what you have right now until December, how about something like that?
I think they're not complaining, we can still do the night to day shift, that's not a problem, but can we just hold off on switching the people until December?
Yeah, I'll
Can
talk
we
to
do
Brian.
that?
Yeah, I can talk to Brian.
That's what you guys are asking, right? Okay, but no, in December it might happen,
No, it'll be January.
I'm sorry, January,
Right, after the holiday.
correct, okay, all right.
Well, are they-
Issues.
Yeah.
But you
Are
gotta
the-
let everybody know that it might happen in January.
Will the sergeants have any input on that? Because I know,
Yeah,
right,
They always have, but.
well, the last staff meeting, I guess y'all had it on a Thursday, and then the schedule was changed on a Monday, Tuesday, and none of them were aware of it. They said it wasn't mentioned and none of them were aware.
Well, they have access to Brian, as you know as I do, and we're all there. So if seriously, if they.
No, but they didn't know any shift change was coming. In fact, one of the sergeants asked him if there was, and he said no.
All right, I'll look into it.
Okay.
I'll talk to him.
Okay, but just kinda let your membership know that there is gonna be some changes in January, but we'll hold off till then. So
But-
that people with vacations
And if
and
there,
Christmas.
if there is changes or whatever, yeah, just
Yeah.
more.
You'll post it ahead of time.
Yeah, if there is
Yes.
changes, once there's
It's supposed to
changes.
be 30 days of notice, supposed
Once,
to be 30 days.
yeah, once it's consistent after that, just so that, the guys aren't saying, hey, I've worked Christmas the last 3 years or 4 years with little kids, like, that's ridiculous. I was like, yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Because most of the people that have issues with this aren't even on Charlie's shift, if that's the target audience, you know what I mean? So I wasn't aware of that, and I didn't even consider that, to be quite honest with you.
Well, that was the only thing I knew of, like I said, unless it was other than what Brian. I don't hover over the lieutenant to say, hey,
Right.
this is where you need to make, I don't do, there's no reason for me to do that. If I had to do that, I don't even do that job, I'll do it. I used to be the scheduler years ago.
Yeah,
So-
we went to him to try to
So,
talk to him.
like I said, that's fine, that's easy, man, I could easily fix that.
That's the easy one. Okay, so we got that done. Protect employees from personal usage or pay reduction resulting from department mandated quarantine. Like if COVID ramps back up, basically. I have someone that we're working on now to see how that's gonna shake out, so, if you don't mind, let's see how that shakes out.
I know one issue with that is guys with COVID were not saying anything because they didn't want to use PO, and then they're coming in and spreading, not COVID or flu or whatever they
Well,
have.
I mean, honestly, I've talked to some of my peers, and really, nowadays, COVID is just like the flu.
Well, the flu, whatever they have,
Yeah.
but they're, coming in
It's-
and spreading.
Well, that's one reason we're doing away with the perfect attendance and giving you guys a holiday, because we don't wanna, like, you know, if you need to use your sick time, you need to use your sick time, so. Okay. Personal leave, preventing change of alteration of notices. Yeah, I talked to the chief about this next one, and
Which one are we on?
okay, sorry, we're on personal leave, Article 21, introduce section to article, preventing change or alteration of an employee's already scheduled personal leave request.
So I don't know if that's.
So if somebody, so are you telling me that if somebody has personal leave scheduled, they might change it? Is that what
Where do we
happened?
have?
I go with
That's
that
second.
Keep more on.
This one?
Yeah.
What you guys prefer.
Yeah, 'cause we don't have anybody
That has to do with the schedule.
like shifts.
Yeah, so once
That was the schedule,
again,
yeah, cause, a couple, one of them coming up,
Yeah.
like say he's using
Gotcha.
24 hours
So that
of
kinda
PL,
goes in the
he
same-
switches shifts, and then now all of a sudden, he's gotta use 48 or 60 or whatever it is, a lot. I
okay,
know
so
that
that'll
was-
resolve that issue?
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
perfect. Okay. The next one, work week overtime and call-outs. We're not inclined to change the time requirements for call-out. I think it's a half hour, 30 minutes if you're recalled, and 2 hours if you're called in. We think that's sufficient. Is that been an issue, or?
It was an issue that was raised, prior to, Detective Daytona leaving. She made the point that a lot of officers are already home, out of uniform, and in the shower at that point, so that it's raising an inconvenience at that point to actually get back in your uniform, you know, go back into work, so now you're resetting the clock, so it's not picking up from, your standard rate of pay, you know, it's more like you're coming in because you're inconvenienced at this point, so it's almost without interruption, you know, to keep the standard rate of pay, but there's an interruption there because they're already home and, you know, because most officers live either in South Daytona, Port Orange, you know, very local, so 30 minutes is, you know, kind of a long time. in my
So you're saying
opinion.
right after the shift, they've been called back in?
If it happens,
I'm
it's
saying
more that
you
it's
got the
happened,
top
it's
time.
very rare occurrences.
Okay, all
Normally
right, then
it's
can
not
we can
actually
move on then from
Yes,
that one?
that's
Okay.
insignificant.
Okay, thank you.
General scheme of things.
Okay,
Because it's more, if they're not telling you before you're leaving at the end of the day, asking for the because somebody brings in sick, whatever,
Mhm.
they should be doing that well in advance before you guys even leave.
yeah.
But I get it, there might be an anomaly that could happen, but.
Moving on to details, we talked extensively about this. I think what we've decided is we're just going to not allow the lieutenants to work the details. Because the way it works with payroll, we gotta still contribute FRS on it, we still gotta pay, you know, so I mean, the way we're doing it, I don't know how we can do it any other way, to be honest with you.
I think I did the calculations and off of my pay rate, let's say I was working that detail at Waldo's, I think you guys were still making $20 an hour, you know, after all the contributions were included, if I were to work that detail. So I was just trying to figure out like a rate of pay.
You're talking about the rate of pay on here?
Yeah, for special
If
details.
you made 55
So
to the city, like
if a
20.
private organization has a contract with the city, they're paying them a set, let's say $75 an hour. After my overtime rate and all the contributions that are included, you would still be banking, an additional $20, so I was just asking for a slight increase, to make it more of an incentive for officers to actually work these details, cause they're so rare and they
Yeah.
hardly ever come up, you know?
That's what I was gonna say, I don't know that either of us wanna fall on the sword over this one, it's not very many.
A lot of people have come to me about this one.
This one?
Yeah, the railroad
That's one reason they weren't
details,
signing up.
the banks, Waldo's.
Well, it had been such a long time since we had an assignment, a special detail assignment. When the captain brought it over, I says the rate of pay that we're gonna get reimbursed is not gonna cover our costs. So we increased it ahead, knowing that we're getting ready to increase the hourly rate by $2 an hour.
That
and-
isn't an issue, yeah,
And
Possibly.
possibly.
possibly. But there's still other administrative functions now that the city has to do in order to send out a bill, do collections, follow up. There's administrative stuff on there, so it's not necessarily we're trying to turn a profit out, we're just trying to recover our costs. And instead of having to address it continuously every site, I said, hey, let's just bump it up to where we can kind of have it at a higher rate and just kind of forget about it for a little bit. That's not, we're not looking at, hey, we're making money off of your special detail. There's a lot of administrative costs, payroll costs, billing costs, administrative time that we wanna make sure that we get covered. And on top of the, use of the vehicle and other stuff, so there's other things in there.
Right.
I get what you're saying, but I'd have to do research to see on how that set rate of pay, what the ramifications are with that as far as FRS and how we would implement that into a payroll.
I mean,
and stuff like that.
it's something that they have to decide too, but FHP, they get to bid the detail. So if it's $75 an hour, but it's not pensionable. So I don't know, that's how FHP does it in their FRS, so.
There's a difference between doing it pensionable and non-pensionable.
So, I mean, that's something that those guys have to decide. If they
But I
want.
mean, but ultimately, and also the way we could, the city could look at it is like, hey, it's available, the overtime's available to you. If you don't wanna do it, don't do it. And the detail goes unfilled. The only reason why we changed the hourly rate we were gonna bill is I wanna make sure moving forward that we're gonna recover our costs administratively, that's all.
What if, I guess we can move on, what if you increased your hourly rate, say from 75 to 100? I mean, sure, they might not want to pay that, but then that would kind of cover the cost of perhaps creating.
Absolutely, and I have no problem of examining that, to say what we would pay, creating a different overtime or modifying the special detail overtime to being a certain amount. Like I said, I'd have to do some research to see like how that affects pension and other items. It was every time I add a new pay code, a new overtime code, a new incentive, it throws wrinkles through the system as far as taxes, accruals,
Well, we just
pensions,
implemented
and-
ExecuTime, which has been a new software system for payroll, so we're in the middle of that right now too, so it's been
I
challenging.
don't know.
So,
But it's not something I would say we rule out, because like you said, yeah, we just increase, I have no problem with that. I think it gives you guys further incentive, and that's fine. Like I said, I just don't know the ins and outs of it, and I don't know if that's an item that needs to be included, or if that's just a,
yeah, I think we can
SOP.
agree, I don't think we can agree it doesn't need to be in the contract, but what we'll do is, if it can be done payroll-wise, then we'll try to do that.
Alright.
Okay,
And it's one of the things that guys have to consider, because typically if it's not done the way they're doing it, it's not pensionable. So is it worth the extra money for it not to be pensionable versus it being pensionable?
yeah, do they put it on their payroll check, or do they put it?
FHP knows cash.
It's,
It's-
Walmart flips out the cash.
That's
It's
the
basically,
difference.
yeah, it's
They pay them
basically,
right there on
it's basically a 1099.
Oh, gotcha, that makes sense.
and
Okay,
that's where I said I'd
okay.
have to do a lot of research.
Okay.
I know that
Well, I can just tell you history, if you wanna hear history. So we used to get cash, the businesses would pay us direct, other than, the railroad company, but the problem was
The work
that if
comp.
one of our officers got hurt.
Yeah,
And so they had to file a workman's comp claim on that officer. The only thing that saved the officer to be covered in workman's comp was he was actually trying to subdue a felon, and because it was a felony, workman's comp claim covered him. If it wasn't, it had to been a misdemeanor, and I remember the officer actually went to go work for Fort Orange, Chris Cation. So he left and went to work there, but at the time, there was a big to-do, so that's when the city here changed it and went to where they were billing the entity, and then technically they're still under the city's, they're employed by the city, but the city was being paid. That's why it started that drama, if you will, or that way of processing it, so. I'm just giving you history, I'm not telling you.
Well, and that's the only thing that allows it to be pensionable. So
Yeah.
it's one of those things, it's a double-edged sword.
Yeah.
And I've heard it both ways, I've heard it cash and just a higher rate of pay, I've heard it both, so, I mean.
The cash was nice, because obviously,
Oh, yeah.
I painted my house.
Yeah, right.
Back in the day, that was that way.
Okay.
okay, so we'll look into that, Casey.
Alright.
Just, let me know, chief, when the next detail's coming up, so we don't miss it.
Yeah, a few in perpetuity.
Yeah.
The only one I know for sure we get is
The railroad, but we don't know when yet.
Right.
Okay.
And the only thing,
Okay.
obviously, if the city elects to go out of that, then obviously we have to defer everything to the sheriff's office, and we don't wanna do that, so that was.
That's what the bank was doing, going to county
Yeah.
with the detail there, because they had one 5 days a week.
We can do that, we can defer all those details, but I hate for you guys to lose that
Yeah,
option if you
like
want.
consensus wise, do you guys want the detail or do you not want the details? Like, what's most of your membership? Do they like it or they don't want it?
I think they would do details, yeah.
They do,
It's just,
if it was worth their while?
Yes.
Okay, alright. Okay,
The
well-
sheriff's office is gonna be raising their detail rate too.
Okay.
Flagler County's doing it, everybody's raising.
But
their
now
rates
I
because
understand,
of
but you don't
costs.
know how they handle the work comp if they're paying them in cash? Are they still?
I don't know how the state does it.
With the,
probably a direct agreement.
No, he's talking about them raising their
They have an
detail
actual
rate.
detail.
No, they're raising
Oh,
their
no.
detail rate, but yeah,
Right.
with the work comp, if it's an approved and they're using the officers' uniforms and all that, the, police work comp is supposed to cover it.
Okay.
Now, you can obviously run into some issues with that, but they're supposed to
Okay.
cover it.
Okay.
But that's why, like I said, most of them do it billing through the city and doing this,
Gotcha.
just because it's easier for everybody.
Right.
And it's pensionable,
Right.
which, I mean, is a much better benefit.
That's what I would.
That's what I was gonna say, you want it on your
So,
pension,
yeah.
yeah, for sure, especially if you're in your high
With
five.
that being said, though, if it's not a 1099 agreement, I would still think we could probably adjust the overtime rate to pay, just contribute, pay the taxes and the FRS on it.
But you could, but they can't use it as pensionable time.
If we change the rate of pay to a higher rate of pay.
No, with changing the rate of pay, if you're still doing it through the city, like you're
Through the
doing it,
city, yeah.
there's the potential for them to use it, but they are gonna run into issues with it being pensionable because it's not a standard rate of pay, it's a specialty
And
rate.
that's what we were wondering, is like, how would
Yeah,
we report this to FRS?
that's why I was like, oh, I don't know if we
There's
can
a
do
lot of
that, yeah.
And that's, if it's a specialty rate of pay, my understanding of how FRS works is that's not pensionable because it's not your standard.
Okay,
Well,
so
well, I
that's
apologize.
fine then.
Yeah.
I didn't know it was that hot of a topic, Casey, but we'll do a little more research since you're telling me it is. And
Maybe, just, and I'm just throwing aside, this spitball here, maybe if you find what the maximum, let's say let's, you should charge us $75, let's say that the maximum rate of pay is $55. Again, I'm spitballing here, and then there are others, you pay the officers $55 an hour for the detail, and then the remainder of the money would obviously cover whatever that expenses, workman's comp to FRS, to all that stuff. But any officer who works it, they're gonna get a guaranteed $55 an hour. Now, granted, there might be one or two guys that are, maybe their overtime rate would meet that, but I'm not saying that they will, but I'm spitballing an idea, so that way you always know it's always gonna be the same rate of pay no matter who works it. Some guys it's more of a benefit, some guys it's not so much of a benefit, but it's still, it's like you said, it goes towards a pension, and it's a win-win. I'm just saying,
Okay.
again, something
Good
good idea
idea.
to think about.
Okay.
Am I wrong or right, or you
Yeah,
guys?
that's good.
And that's a question that you've got to look into, because Flagler County Sheriff's Office, when they do that flat rate, their position is they can't, it's not pensionable. I haven't done enough research to know the answer.
Like it's a bonus of some kind almost.
Something like that. And like I said, I
I
haven't
know
done
what
enough
you're saying.
research to know the answer.
Yeah, I know what
but-
you're saying though, yeah, that's what I was worried about.
So it's just something to,
So it's a trade-off,
To take
you
into
get more money,
consideration.
more money now,
Yeah, but
But
I mean, if
does
the
it-
officers are okay with that, I mean,
but no, it's up to you guys. If it is the trade-off, because I can't say it is or it's not, I don't know enough about that. But what I can tell you is if it's the trade-off, then the decision you guys have to make is that worth it? Now, it would also save the city, because they wouldn't have to make the contribution.
Right.
So it's just one of those, I mean, nobody's losing either way.
Right,
It's just a matter of what's the best way to do things, to one, get people on this, and to make sure that both the city and the officers get the most benefit out of doing that, because it's not a difficult job description.
agreed. Okay. Light duty assignments, I wish we could have gotten to that with Les, cause he's pretty,
Oh, he said that,
compassionate about it.
he was talking about changing the wording on that. He brought up just about.
You
if-
were
if
ta-
you're
you were
on
saying that you don't
around
think-
The rate of pay.
Yep.
Yeah.
I'm gonna
He said change the
propose that we
wording.
get rid of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we'll address that when we get to Article 26. Yeah. Specialty pay, so yes, Casey, we're gonna go ahead and give you $25 per payday for specialty pay, as long as the grant's in place, but we're gonna do that outside the contract, I think we talked about that. So I'll get with you on that with the PAF, personal action form, okay? Les does not wanna do the bilingual right now, we'll have to try again next contract for that, so. We'll talk about wages in just a minute. Wage stability, I think that went along with the work comp light duty, so we'll talk about that when we get to Article 26. The Me Too article, we'll talk about that when we get to the wage article. The dollar increase, we'll talk about that when we get to the wage article. moving on to policies, meal breaks. I'm gonna keep moving on. I don't wanna talk about meal breaks because, I didn't realize how you guys were doing your meal breaks, so you don't wanna bring meal breaks up to me. Cause then you'll be working 13 hours and taking an hour lunch unpaid. So I think we should move on from meal breaks. So right now you get 30 minutes paid for your meal break.
Right, because we have to respond to calls.
Correct.
Right.
Okay, so I think that's probably the best scenario, so. Cause you were saying something about,
Those
You
probably,
want-
because compared to other agencies, they get an hour and 15.
of uninterrupted. So then they probably don't get paid for that.
Well,
Yeah,
they
they
still
do.
have to respond to
Yeah.
priority calls. No
Yeah.
matter what, if you're working in your law enforcement, if a priority call comes out, you drop your lunch and go. So you're subject to interruptions all the time regardless. And the fact is it's slightly more difficult for us to get in and out of restaurants and such than it is the average person because everybody's still asking us questions. We're dealing with giving legal advice at the table sometimes, you know, it's not
No, I
exactly
know, that's why we
convenient to
pay
eat.
you. I mean, that's why you get paid, because we
Right.
understand it's not, it's never uninterrupted, you know,
Right.
so. We're not inclined to change that. We think that everything's working fine, really. We just had an unfortunate event happen, that's all. Take-home vehicle. Again, we think this policy is very, very good already. So I would urge you not to open that policy up, because the chief, when he took over, increased that air miles. So we don't wanna go back to decreasing the air miles, and I think this is only addressing one person that lives very, very far, North Palm Coast. We have several people taking their cars to Palm Coast.
Right.
So I don't think you guys wanna go there with
Is there
this.
something that he can do as far
No,
as paying
he can
extra
move.
for miles or anything like that?
No, that's too far to bring the car, Brian, I mean, that's really far, he's in North Palm Coast, I think. And the manager agrees.
Yeah, and the air mile is just an interesting concept, because I don't believe we have any cars that travel via air. I think they all stay on the ground,
Yeah.
and so it's.
Usually.
Yeah.
If we change that to miles, it would knock out like 3 or 4 other people that live in Palm Coast. So, again, I don't think that's something you guys wanna,
Just doing the due diligence.
yeah, I understand, I know, I
Do you
know.
allow them to park at, say, at?
Yeah,
Yes,
sure.
he
Yeah,
was
same
told
shit.
that,
Correct,
he's
that's right.
he's welcome to park at the fire station by his house.
Oh, okay.
You can park at the fire station.
And I will also tell you that I had a conversation with him when we first hired him, that he knew the policy, and he told me he was moving closer. So I guess he decided not to,
Okay.
so. Okay, hurricane policy, so we have talked about that extensively. I know I'll let the chief talk about this one, but I know you're working on a policy as we speak.
Yeah, we.
Okay.
One thing, not to cut you off, but I don't think because he doesn't have anything to do with it, is the pay for the hurricane.
Yes, we're not going to increase the 8 hours,
Well, because that's,
however,
okay, go ahead.
yeah. So we're not gonna increase the 8 hours, so if city hall is closed, you guys will get the same benefit. So that's not changing per less.
And that's where the whole disaster pay came from, was the concept of the disaster is so bad that City Hall is closed, and City Hall employees are getting a benefit of being paid. Those are the hours that you guys would get double time for the hours that City Hall is closed, and that's why it was always tied.
That's not what I'm talking about, the ones that are working. The ones that are working, like say they're working during the hurricane, they get double time for 8 hours.
Right.
The rest of the time, they're just getting their regular time. Every other agency either gets double time or double time and a half when they're working during the hurricane.
Well, they'd also be getting overtime if they were beyond their 84.
No, if this is their, whatever their regular shift is.
Yeah, their
or
regular
whatever.
shift, they just get paid, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
But that's what I
But-
mean, we're the only ones that do that like that. Like say, somebody's working 12, 14, 16 hours during the hurricane, they're getting their regular pay for that, but only double time for 8 hours.
Right, I understand.
Yeah, that's not